Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Horma Obadia Hanifa, and now I will present the first slide, that is the definition of interlanguage. So, Larry Salinker in 1972 introduced the term of interlanguage or IL to refer the intermediate states or interim grammars of a learner's language as it moves toward the target. So by this definition, we can conclude that IL or interlanguage, or we can say a new language, is kind of language or linguistic system that is used both foreign and second language learners in the process of learning a target language. As in error analysis and first language studies of the 1960s and 1970s, Salinker and others taking this approach considered the development of the IL to be a creative process driven by inner forces in interaction with environmental factors and influenced both by first language and by input from the target language.
Hello everyone, my name is Nabila Fairuz Zahida, and in this occasion I would like to elaborate the characteristics of the interlanguage. Number 1. Systematic. At any particular point, the IL is governed by rules which constitute the learner's internal grammar. These rules are discoverable by analyzing the language that is used by the learner at the time. It is about what he or she can produce and interpret correctly, as well as the errors that are made. Although different learners have different interlanguage, they all have their own rules within their variations. That is why IL or interlanguage is systematic. Number 2. Dynamic. The system of rules which learners have in their minds change frequently, or is in a state of flux, resulting in a succession of interim grammars. Salinker, in his book, views this change not as a steady progression along a continuum, but discontinuous progression from stable plateau to stable plateau. Interlanguage serves as a bridge between language 1 and language 2 when learners lack knowledge and find mastery of rules. But over time, learners progress. They refine certain rules and obtain new ones. Interlanguage is dynamic because the learners learn the current version of the language that they are learning. Number 3. Variable. Although the IL is systematic, differences in context result in different patterns of language use. They may apply the same rule differently in separate contexts or domains. Accuracy and fluency vary across occasions as learners have alternative rules for the same function. 4. Reduced system, both in form and function. The characteristic of reduced form refers to the less complex grammatical structures that typically occur in an IL compared to the target language. For example, omission of inflections, such as the past tense suffix in English. On the other hand, the characteristics of reduced function refers to the smaller range communicative needs typically served by an IL, especially if the learner is still in contact with members of the language 1 speech community. So, those are characteristics of interlanguage. Thank you for the time. For the next, I will give it to my friend.
And then is differences. Salinker in 1972 stressed that there are differences between interlanguage development in SLA and L1 acquisition by children, including different cognitive processes involved. From McLaughlin, 1987, page 61, there are language transfer from L1 to L2, transfer of training or how the L2 is taught, strategy of second language learning, or how learner approach the L2 material and the test of L2 learning, strategy of second language communication, or ways that learner try to communicate with others in the L2. Overgeneralization of the target linguistic material, in which L2 rules that are learned are applied too broadly. Overgeneralization includes some of the interlingual or developmental error which were illustrated in the previous section.
Okay, so we go to the next part, that is fossilization. First of all, we have to know what fossilization is. In this case is in language learning. Language fossilization is a broad term used to describe many forms of arrested progress in second language acquisition. This arrested progress can occur in one or more specific features of the target language, and many teachers and researchers consider fossilization as an unavoidable process. Then, what is fossilization in SLA? So, fossilization is a concept that refers to the end state of SLA, specifically to an end state that is not native-like. By end state, we mean that point at which the learner's mental representation of language, developing system, or interlanguage, all are related constructs, ceases to develop. Then, what causes the language fossilization? Causes of language fossilization is practice makes permanent. For example, hearing and reading too much incorrect English, like when you are in a classroom with other English learners, that might also cause fossilization. On the other hand, if you don't study with a teacher, for example, then you will hard to get correction from your mistakes. This phenomenon relates to the age of learners. For the learners, with the older L2 learners will more likely to fossilize than the younger ones. But another factors, that is social identity and communicative need, also impacts this phenomenon. Then the impact of fossilization to language learning and teacher. Fossilization refers to the process in which incorrect language becomes a habit and cannot easily be corrected. So teachers can help the learners to notice their fossilized errors by, for example, recording them speaking, or by asking them to keep a record of written errors as part of a language portfolio. Identification of fossilization or association of IL development before reaching target language norms is even more controversial, even though primarily for social and political reasons rather than linguistic reasons. The thing is, should individuals be considered fossilized in L2 development because they retain a foreign accent, for instance, in spite of productive fluency in other aspects of the target language? For example, there are some people that is from a non-native English speaker, but they are fluent in speaking English, and that make controversy in fossilization. There may even be an advantage in retaining a non-native accent, since sounding native may be misinterpreted by native speakers as implying corresponding native social and cultural knowledge.